Venture capital firm Sequoia is spinning its China and India units into two new entities, distinct from its US and Europe operations. The firm said sharing the Sequoia brand across borders has created market confusion and portfolio conflicts. This, of course, comes amid an increasingly tense US-China relationship. Biden has been working to restrict investments in China, and TikTok is under intense scrutiny, with Montana taking steps to ban it. Meanwhile, one of TikTok's biggest investors is Sequoia China. It has a 10% stake in the parent company ByteDance. In other words, running a global investment business has become, to quote Sequoia, increasingly complex. The split will take effect by next March. The China unit will be renamed Hongshan, the India unit Peak 15 Partners, and the US-Europe unit will remain Sequoia Capital. Scott, what's your reaction to this?
So that sentence in there, the firm said sharing the Sequoia brand across borders has created market confusion and portfolio conflicts. That's a bald-faced lie. That has nothing to do with this decision. This decision is that they are worried that they're going to get caught in the crossfire of a U.S.-Sino conflict where American investors might not be able to invest or register a gain from ByteDance if ByteDance doesn't comply with U.S. regulations. And what they're sitting on top of is potentially $100 billion in gains. And the partners at Sequoia want to make sure they have access to that. So they'll create a Chinese unit that's subject to Chinese laws or international laws, of which there are very few, not subject to the long arm of Uncle Sam or regulations, or they can do whatever they want and they won't come under fire for it. So this is nothing but an attempt to protect and ring fence that $100 billion should ByteDance be seen as an enemy or a direct defense threat. They have decided we don't want to comply with U.S. laws if there's 100 or don't want to comply with potential U.S. regulations if, in fact, there's $100 billion at the end of the rainbow here. So, you know, this is an attempt to wrap themselves in three different flags. This is Sequoia waving whatever flag gets them the most money. Full stop. It has nothing to do. Oh, my God, that's hilarious. Market confusion and portfolio conflicts. Yeah, that's why they're doing it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I want to ask you, there's this one side of this, which is that America and Biden, the US doesn't want US companies investing in China. The other side of it could be that China doesn't want US companies investing in China. And one reason for that would just be they don't want information getting out. And that's especially true if, like you say, if ByteDance goes public and that's a $100 billion IPO, then what if ByteDance has to then share their disclosures with US regulators and that gets out? So I guess my question to you is, how much of this do you think is an appeasement to China versus the US? And I was also going to ask if you think that the ByteDance IPO had anything to do with this. It sounds like that's a resounding yes.
I think China I think there's a thawing. I think she went in and wrapped the knuckles and cut off the fingers of a bunch of Chinese companies, but doesn't want to cut off the arm. Yep. If you look at what they've done the past few months, I think they've tried to thaw relationships a little bit between the tech community and the global investment community. So I don't think it's as much as China wants to chase off American investors. I'm just looking at some of the notes that were pulled together here. One of the other reasons they said was that Sequoia gave was that it has become increasingly complex to run a decentralized global investment business. Centralized back office functions are more of a hindrance and market confusion due to the shared Sequoia brand. I mean, literally, these people must have the same IR people as Meta. They're like, what will it's literally like, what's the theme here at Sequoia Public Relations? We think people are fucking idiots and that we can say anything and they'll believe it. It's just such blather that reeks of so inauthentic. It's increasingly complex to run a decentralized global investment business. So we're going to simplify by splitting into three different entities. Yeah, that'll simplify things. Anyways, I find this, okay, go have at it. This is about, there are 100 billion reasons why Sequoia is splitting into three companies. Yeah.
Do you think that there's an argument to be made that this is sort of a good thing from a national security perspective? And that is, Sequoia is arguably the most iconic, influential VC firm in the world. the fact that they're doing this will probably set a tone that going forward, US VC firms shouldn't invest in Chinese companies and vice versa. There'll probably just be less cross-border investing at this point. Do you think that maybe that could be argued is a pretty good thing?
I don't know. I think that VCs will go where the money is. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, short of, I think they'd invest in Iran if they could. I don't, and maybe North Korea. It just, capital goes where it's going to get its return and where it's legal. And, the best example of that is, and we're going to talk about it, the Kingdom and or Live and PGA. But I think there's a benefit to this, and that is there are people who will, in organizations that will just pursue a return on invested capital, and moral clarity for them isn't, or even fidelity to the Commonwealth isn't high up on their list. That's not to say there aren't a lot of great citizens out there who run companies and try and do the right thing every day. But I think there's no shortage of, if there is opportunity in tainted baby milk and it's not regulated, there will be a VC who will fund it. And I'm not saying it's Sequoia Capital because they're so rich that they probably, can be a little bit more selective and not get involved in stuff like that. But I mean, Christ, look at the people, these investment banks. They're good people. I know them. Look at the shit they took public. They knew retail investors were going to lose a ton of money. They knew it. They knew this stuff was shit. And they still underwrote it. I mean, look at the people, and all these people in crypto, not bad people. They really think that, Cumrocket is a place to store value. That Solana. I mean, this stuff is just, it's not, you want to be a good citizen. You want to have some fidelity to the Commonwealth. You want to be a good employer. But for-profit entities are primarily there for profit and to create economic security for them and their shareholders. And some companies, a lot of companies won't engage in this type of thing, but there's, that's why SIN funds outperform, Calvert funds used to invest in just basically ESG. They were kind of the original ESG investor. And Asphalt to Motorin just points out your returns are going to be lower. When you start limiting your universe based on any criteria, your returns are going to go down. Yeah. And what he says is, the hard part around ESG investing is who gets to decide what is the E, the S, and the G. Yeah. And then you see these ESG awards and sustainability awards being given to Southwest Airlines that consumed a billion gallons of gasoline last year. Yeah. So there is something. At the end of the day, I think that it's up to us to decide what the rules are and put in place regulations such that if a platform ends up being the perfect vehicle for organizing and distributing child pornography, somebody gets hit really hard. And I think that should be a law. But I just think we keep saying over and over, expecting or waiting on the better angels of these CEOs and these companies. I think that's a bad strategy.
On regulation, Biden is considering banning U.S. investment in certain sectors in China, like quantum computing and semiconductors and even AI most recently. Would you support that?
No, that's a really interesting one. I don't know, because I believe that U.S. companies should cash the check of Gulf funds. I think that they should take that money. The Gulf has so much capital and China has so much capital that to not take that capital substantially increases the cost of capital for American entrepreneurs, which makes us less prosperous and less competitive. The idea, though, if the security risk around AI is as great as all of these catastrophists are claiming, I can see reason that American capital shouldn't be trying to advance the AI competence of Chinese companies where there's very little distance or sunlight between them and the CCP. So I can see there's certain, I don't know if there are bans on can we invest in weapons technology? I just don't know. But to me, that I think you could make an argument for that.